Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill and I'm indoors for a nice cozy topic today. We're going to talk about amaryllis bulbs. What are they? Where do they come from? And how do you take care of them? These are the flowers of an amaryllis bulb. Aren't they just stunning? I absolutely love them. And they are a very popular gift to give during the holiday season. You can find them just about everywhere. Grocery stores, hardware stores, home centers, garden centers, online. They're very easy to come by. They make a great gift, but they're not expensive. And what's really nice is for those of us who deal with cold winters where gardening outdoors is not even an option, this is a way to do a little indoor gardening and see some color in the dead of winter. Now, folks who live in USDA hardiness zones 9 to 11 get to grow amaryllis outdoors year-round. And I am insanely jealous because I have relatives who live in Southern California and they have them growing and blooming out in their gardens. And it's just the coolest looking plant ever. Now, before we get any farther along here, I do want to clarify one thing that's kind of a pet peeve with me. What you're looking at is not really an amaryllis. It's a hippeastrum. That is the genus that these wonderful bulbs that are so popular belong to. They originate from Central and South America. The real amaryllis is also known as naked ladies. It is a bulb plant that sends up a flower stalk and blooms before it sends up any leaves. And that is where it got the name of naked ladies, because there's no leaves. Unfortunately, somehow the horticultural industry got us all hooked on the name amaryllis, and that is what's commonly used. So if you ever hear the name hippeastrum, that is exactly what it's referring to, is the bulbs that you're looking at right now. For this video, I'm going to call them amaryllis because that's what you're going to see on the packaging. That's what you're going to be used to hearing. But I do want to clarify, they technically are hippeastrum, not amaryllis. There, I've got that off my chest. Now, amaryllis bulbs usually come as part of a kit. You typically will get a container of some sort, a bag of some potting soil, and the bulb itself. And the bulbs are huge. So what you want to do is unpackage everything, put the potting soil into the container, and plant the bulb. Now, a lot of times the packaging will give you an idea of how to plant the bulb, but if you don't have anything like that, you want the neck of the bulb to be sticking just above the potting soil level. Make sure that you water it. You want the potting soil to be lightly moist, not sopping wet, because that will make the bulb rot, and that is the last thing you want to have happen. I typically water mine once a week, and that is sufficient. Then you want to move the pot to an area of your house that gets some somewhat bright but filtered sunlight, and they will grow like you wouldn't believe. Now, some bulbs will send up the leaves first and then the flower stalk or stalks, sometimes you get more than one, and bloom. Other ones will send up the flower stalk first. So it just depends on the type that you have. They typically bloom about 6 to 10 weeks after you've planted them. So maybe mark your calendar so that you have a rough idea of when it might be blooming. Now, there's a new option with amaryllis bulbs that I wanted to make sure you knew about, and those are waxed amaryllis. And so as the name implies, the outside of the bulb is coated with a layer of wax. You do not need to plant them in any kind of potting soil. You don't even need to set them in a container because they're completely encased in that wax. And you don't need to water them. So talk about low maintenance. Now, I have never grown them before. I got my first one this year from Gardener's Supply, and I'm anxious to see how it does. And you can see it already has a little bit of the leaf tips poking out from the top of the bulb. If you were to go through its whole season as far as letting it grow and bloom, it's very unlikely that it will grow again another season because of being encased in wax. And so my plan, when it is completely done blooming and I let it develop some nice leaves, I am going to carefully peel off the wax and then plant it just as I normally would in a container and let it grow that way. One thing I wanted to point out to you is that these flower stalks can get top heavy and cause a plant to topple over, and that would be awful. As a matter of fact, it happened to me once, and the whole plant toppled off of our sideboard here in our dining room, and it snapped off the flower stalk right as it was starting to bloom. Oh man, I think I shed a few tears that day. So I want you to be aware of that. Sometimes it doesn't get too top heavy, but I always like to play it safe. So what I've got here is a stake system that I got from Gardener's Supply, and it actually is multiple parts so that you can make it as tall as you need it. But this just gives me a little added insurance to know that this is not going to fall over and break. I hate when something like that happens. So be sure to look into either getting something along these lines. It's not very expensive, and of course you're going to use it year after year after year. Put in some kind of a bamboo stake or something if it appears that this is really getting top heavy. Just trying to save you some grief. I've saved the most important part of this video for the end because I want you to remember this. When your amaryllis bulb or bulbs finish blooming, do not throw them away because you can get them to rebloom for you for years. If you live in hardiness zones 9 to 11, you can transplant yours outdoors, keep them outdoors year-round, and they will bloom for you for years to come. But if you live in a cold area like I do, where you've got frosts and snow and so on, you cannot plant these outdoors and leave them outdoors year-round. So this is what my husband and I do, and it has been working great. What we do is, after the bulbs have finished blooming, we just keep watering them once a week. We let them continue to grow really nice leaves. You can see they're really pretty. And then once the danger of frost has passed in the spring, we move all of these pots out to our deck. And you have to gently acclimate them to the intensity of the sunlight, otherwise the leaves will sunburn. But then what you want to do is water them 1 to 2 times a week. Make sure they don't dry out, but again, don't get them sopping wet. And we fertilize them every so often. You can use a slow release fertilizer, you can use a nitrogen fertilizer. There are a lot of different options, but we fertilize them every so often and just enjoy the plants. They're not going to bloom for us outdoors during the spring and summer months. But once there's the risk of frost in the fall, we move all the pots back indoors. We continue to water them on a weekly basis, and then they're going to start blooming again. So this one is always the first one to bloom for us. I would say we probably moved these pots back in about a month and a half ago. And this guy always just starts sending up a flower stalk right away, which is so cool. The other ones will tend to bloom in January and February, so it kind of spreads out over the months, which is really nice. But again, don't throw them away because they will continue to bloom for you every year. And you know, some folks will put them in the dark for a certain number of weeks and so on. We haven't had to do anything like that. We're trying to keep this simple. So just move them outside for spring and summer, keep them watered, give them a little fertilizer that will help them store energy for the following year's bloom, and then move them inside before you get any frost. Easy as can be. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video and have fun growing amaryllis because they are just gorgeous. I'll see you in a week.